mic, camera, action.
Say, isn't that Buck's girl?
Sure is.
What's she doing here with the dead kid?
I don't know, man.
All right. Welcome back to the Filmography, the show dedicated to watching every credited film from an actor's complete back catalogue from past debut through to present day in chronological order. Each episode, I'm joined by an esteemed guest to watch and discuss the next entry from their focused filmography and consider how it ranks amidst their career and whether we can trace any typecasting trends or topic traits or theatrical tics. Today's guest is the undead Dave Horrocks, risen from the grave of VHS Strikes Back's VHS. Wow. Let's give that another go.
To say.
Yeah. Today's guest is the undead Dave Horrocks, risen from the grave of VHS Strikes Back Patreon picks. Today's film is Bob Balaban's My Boyfriend's Back from 1993. We watch, you listen, and hopefully watch along too. Dave, hello.
Hello, sir. Good to speak to you again.
Yeah, you too. And obviously, I have to start by thanking you for giving up your precious free time, which I know is not abundant at the moment, for this film watch and this film discussion.
That's all right. It's good. And I thought, obviously, you're embarking on a new project now. You've closed off the Statham thing. I'm sure you'll make a few more movies, so I'm sure you'll dip back into that arena at some point. But, you know, this one came up. I didn't see anyone else clambering for it. And when you're early in your Jason Statham watching career, you know, we watched a terrible film called Turn It Up. And so I think I thought on this project, it'd only be fitting that I turn up with an equally terrible film and chat about that as well.
To be fair, yes, thank you. That is definitely true. I would Turn It Up, arguably, maybe it's better, but we'll get into that, I guess, as we go.
I think it's fucking close. Sorry, do you swear on this one? I can't remember.
I do swear on this one, yeah.
Okay.
We have Chris on sometimes as a guest.
That is true.
Right?
Usually does Absolutely. It for most of us.
But yeah, I'm trying to rack my brains and think about all the films I have had you on to discuss, and I'm not sure if I've been that generous. If you have even had a single great one.
I mean, you could say Fast and Furious 7, maybe. I think, you know, it was. I don't think I gave it a glowing review. But having watched 8 and 9, 7 got better. But yeah, those were big, bombastic sort of popcorn films, weren't they? So they weren't terrible. So yeah, they weren't too bad.
Yeah, totally fair. Whereas this is not big and bombastic and action-packed. What it is really, really odd.
That's one way of putting it.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it thought it was doing, and we're going to talk about that for sure. I think it thought it was doing something, but I'm not sure it managed to achieve it in any way. But it fits a pattern of, I think, kind of popular films at that time, doesn't it? You know, we just had the Buffy movie around this time as well, and actually the main actor in this is in the Buffy movie in a small role.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew Lowry. So he plays one of like the friends of the basketball jocks and stuff in Buffy. But yeah, there was sort of a trend, I think, wasn't there, of these kind of like supernaturally inflected kind of high schooly romantic comedies, I guess you could call it, or call this, around the time, of which this fits in another genre, but it's definitely down the bottom of this kind of sub genre of horror and comedy.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even think of it in terms of being a genre as such. What I would say is it's funny, you know, the more and more I go back and watch more and more movies, you do start to see patterns that jar a little bit with your day-to-day life now in 2024. And one of the things that jumped out at me, I mean, almost half of this script is almost written like an AI Jimmy Savile or something. Some of his dialogue, I did like the idea of the comics, the way it started off and it introduced you to the story, but they're basically kids. And then the words that the writers chose to use were that I lusted after her for the next however 12 years or whatever. I'm like, but you were fucking 8 or
Yeah.
something, you know, when you
Yeah.
like that is a strange choice of words. But yeah, it's just all very strange. But I mean, Missy, I think her name's Missy, isn't it?
Yeah,
Missy
the character,
McCloud.
yeah.
The shallowest character of all. She's basically got no agency at all. She's just completely there to be the object of his affections, and it's all very toxic, actually. So it hasn't been. I say it is a terrible movie. Objectively, it's terrible, but I do think it's kind of interesting as well, just to look at some of the attitudes and the ideas behind it.
Yeah, I agree. It feels lost in time. Some of the stuff is kind of like John Hughesy, kind of, you know, there's so many films that went through my mind as I was watching this, and a lot of them were kind of John Hughes type movies, Ferris Bueller particularly, but other things like Risky Business jumped into my head, and one of Tony's favorites, in fact, Tony's favorite, Heather's, jumped into my head as I was watching this at times, because I think it wants to be satirical, but it also, obviously it's later than most of these movies. It's kind of 10 years later than some of these, but it doesn't feel like an early 90s movie either.
No,
I don't know where it fits, and it made me think of my VHS pick for you guys last time. It made me think the closest thing I'm thinking of was Tammy and the T-Rex, which was another movie that didn't seem to understand much better than this, to be fair. Didn't seem to understand where it fit in a kind of time place. Like that sort of felt like it was 50s characters in a 90s movie wearing 80s clothes, and they just seem a bit all over the place.
Yeah, another one. I mean, I've got a bit of a recency bias because I just watched it this weekend, but Mannequin.
Yeah.
You know, Kim Cattrall's character literally has no personality whatsoever. She's just literally there to worship the guy and like praise him. And the thing is, he's kind of an artist and he gets sacked from various jobs, but she's really supportive and thinks he's amazing. And it's like, fucking hell, if you know, if you ever see like an obvious script jumping out on the page of like some fucking frustrated writer or something. Oh, you women, you just need to be more supportive of men or something. You know, it's just ridiculous. And so that for that reason, the dynamic between the male and the female character that sort of sprung to mind as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I haven't seen that for a long time. Weird Science, I guess, as well. In that way, this kind of these women are invented in order to, and that's what Missy is in this, isn't she? She's an invention of his own juvenile adolescent wish fulfillment, and he's just never got over it, as you said, for like 8 years, 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Missy, what was her name? Tracy Lind. Is a beautiful looking woman and could probably be in a Whitesnake video or something. Maybe 93 again. My head does go to the 80s with this movie, but 93 is way past Whitesnake.
Bon Jovi, maybe.
Bon Jovi, could definitely appear in one of those videos. So, and I think she might be a bit older than him as well. Certainly looks it, but it has been a fun one to go back to be fair.
Yeah, and I agree. Like the way that he is set up as a character from the start, through that voiceover, and actually the returning voiceover all the way through, I really didn't enjoy. And he just comes across as a douche, basically.
Dick, yeah.
He's not a person you want to spend any time with, and that's pre-zombie, to be fair. So once he's a zombie, definitely don't want to be around him.
Yeah, and I guess because you don't see anything of Missy's personality. When he's
Mm.
declaring his love for her, you're just like, really? Or do you
Mm.
not just fancy the pants off her? I mean, that's okay as well, right? But it's the way he's declaring his love, and
Mm.
just fucking. He's a bit Peter Parker, isn't he? You know, Peter Parker. Oh, woe is my life, and even though he gets all the hot women and stuff.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Much less charming than Peter Parker, though, of course.
Yeah, I mean, especially Tom Holland. He's great, isn't he? But yeah, it was just a definite relic, and
Mm.
not really a likable character. I don't think his entourage, Eddie,
Mm.
I don't think was particularly great either. Actually, I hadn't thought about the Spider-Man thing before, but the actual
Mm.
high school setting and having Flash type bullies around
Yeah,
him as well. Maybe there is a bit more to that than
I
I
think
thought
there
before.
is. I hadn't thought of it, but considering the comic covers, as you said at the start, and then
Yeah,
they use them for transitions later, don't they, from scene to scene, often
yeah.
either crossfades into a comic or the next scene starts as a comic and then crosses into live action. Yeah, I think that's a really good shout. I hadn't thought of it, but yeah, I'd rather watch Spider-Man 3 or Amazing Spider-Man 2, or I'd rather watch the
Every day of
90s
the week.
Spider-Man with the guy. Do you remember the ones with the guy in the pajamas? When we had that like spate of 90s kind of, we had Captain Americas and Spider-Mans in the 90s that were live action. I'd rather watch those as well than
Was it 90s? I remember the 1990 Captain America. I'm trying to think of the Spider-Man one. There was a 90s Flash as well with what's his name?
it's the guy who becomes the dad in
Shit. Yeah.
yeah
John
in
Wesley
Dawson's
Ship or
Creek or
something.
something. Yeah.
I mean, we do have Edward Herman, don't we? Who appeared
Yes.
as the dad in Lost Boys as well. So, a bit of a supernatural connection there, vampires and zombies.
Yeah, and he's definitely been brought in to make that link for people, hasn't it? 100%.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's a mess. But then when you read kind of about the behind the scenes, I think like Bob Balaban was brought in quite late on, into the director's brought in quite late on because they wanted, it's Sean Cunningham, isn't it, who is Friday the 13th guy, basically. It's kind of the
Right.
powerhouse.
Okay.
He's almost kind of the his name is escaping me now. Who's the guy who brings out all the Blumhouse? Jason Blum, who brings out like the kind of the horrors.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I think Sean Cunningham was a bit of one of these people at this time who, he kind of, he'd had his Friday the 13th success, but then he was kind of behind executive producing other movies and other things. So I guess he's kind of the figurehead behind this. And they wanted the director, who then I think went on to do like one of the Jason movies later on for this, but they wouldn't give it to him because he was an unproven talent at this point. So yeah, Bob Balaban comes in quite late, and whether he's trying to bring in some of the satirical stuff that maybe wasn't there in the script or what, I don't know. But yeah, it wants to be David Lynch. It wants to be Tim Burton, maybe. And it's a long way away from all of those things.
Absolutely. I was just having a quick look. There is a tenuous link, obviously, apart from me, but to the VHS as well. VHS Strikes Back. So in 1993, I was just having a quick look at some of the other films that came out, to kind of ground you in the time. Because, like I say, I think about this movie and I'm thinking 80s, but it's not. I need to reground myself. But you had things like Jurassic Park was the top grossing movie. You had Mrs. Doubtfire and The Link, The Fugitive, which we just did last week. But Sleepless in Seattle, The Firm, Indecent Proposal, Schindler's List, Cliffhanger, Philadelphia, actually Groundhog Day. So when you think about those movies, it helps calibrate my mind about in the time and the type of movies that were being created. And like I say, it just makes this film look even weirder. It's just like it is not in keeping with the other movies of the time. It should be in the 80s. And things like there's no kind of or I didn't pick up on any dialogue explaining why the fuck did he come back as a zombie. He just did. And I talked about Mannequin, and that's okay. She just, for some reason, she's an Egyptian, Caucasian woman, and then suddenly becomes this mannequin in today's time. Okay, no one's explaining it, but I expect that of the 80s, but I expect a bit more from the 90s. I expect some kind of explanation. Not only why did he come back, but also why is everyone so cool with it?
I know, it's weird.
Like,
I mean, the first guy he meets is the kind of caretaker of the cemetery, isn't he?
yeah.
He's just like, "Oh, hi, good to see you."
Yeah,
You're right.
it's like this has
And
not
that
happened.
pattern
This
continues.
has
Yeah.
happened before.
Yeah, and then we have the newsreader later, don't we? And she says, "This is the second time in this small town an event like this has happened." And there's like the old lady, the granny, isn't there, whose husband came back like 40 years previously. Yeah, it's very odd.
It is, and I felt like they were trying to play on some kind of racist elements
Yes,
as
yeah,
well. They
yeah.
were trying to liken the zombie and how the yokels were treating, this
Definitely.
relationship between a zombie and a living person. So I thought it was interesting, but it was interesting they tried it, but I just thought it was all massively ham-fisted.
Agreed, because I think they didn't. Think about Night of the Living Dead, which does that and is a pinnacle and is still held in high regard now, and because it knew that was its singular vision, right? That's what it wanted to say. And actually, obviously, all those Romero movies had a singular vision, had a subtext they wanted to say. But I agree, I got that. I got like a small town mindset versus kind of progressive, like differentiation of people and like how people are changing. But also, you get that kind of like 50s rebel without a cause kind of teenagery vibe again, don't you? Where like teenagers are different and new, and they don't do what the stuffy old people think they should do. But you also get that kind of teenage hormonal lustful stuff, like he really wants to bite Missy because actually really what he really wants to do is have sex with Missy. So it doesn't quite know what it wants to do with all of this stuff, I think, and it's just a bit of a melange that doesn't come together.
Oh, that's a new word on me, but I like it. Melange. I hadn't heard that
Don't look
before.
it up because I probably used it wrong, and then
Sounds tasty. I tell you, there is one bit, and just because it's ridiculous, one bit that kind of made me laugh, and that's before he becomes the zombie, and he's having his little Scrubs-like mind wander, and he's imagining basically about to have sex with Missy, and he's kind of on the basketball court. You got the crowd cheering and everything, and then the referee stops him and is like, "No, you haven't got a regulation size penis. This is not big enough." So I was like, "Okay, I get that. It's a shame we couldn't drag Chris on, but he's tied up. But I'm sure we'd have had a
why are you thinking about Chris when you're thinking about non-regulation size?
Nose joke? No, it's just he's always the first one in the line to say, "Oh yeah, mine's tiny" or whatever.
That's true.
So I thought that was funny, and again, it made me think of Scrubs. I mean, this was obviously pre-Scrubs, so it's not like it's copied it. But I'm sort of wondering, okay, is this like a surreal thing? I think obviously with everyone being chill about a zombie walking around, it is kind of surreal. But then the mind wander stuff didn't really appear that much after, and so it left me wondering right up until the end of the movie whether it was all a bit of a dream. I was surprised that it didn't end up that way, but yeah, I thought it was all just going to be, he's just woken up or some of the old J.R. Ewing stuff or whatever.
Yeah, well, like the whole Jacob's Ladder kind of idea, isn't it? Exactly. Yeah, that it's all been in your mind as you pass on to the next. Yeah, absolutely. I'd forgotten about that scene actually, and you're right. It returns a couple of times, doesn't it? When you have these kind of once he's become a zombie, you get one or two more, don't you? Almost kind of like American Werewolf in London style.
Yeah.
Dream sequences, and you get almost kind of dreams within dreams at time, but none of them are memorable enough or sophisticated enough or like do anything. I think the one you've mentioned probably is the best one, really, because it sort of has something humorous to do, and then we start getting into the surreality of it, and it all just becomes too jumbled.
Yeah, and at some point, do we want to discuss the iconic presence that is Matthew McConaughey?
Well, we definitely do at some point, because obviously that's why we're here. But What's hilarious is, of course, that this is film number 2 in my list. Strangely, in some places, I see that the trivia lists it as his first movie. It's definitely not. It's not on his list of like filmography, but also I read his autobiography before starting this project, and it's Days Confused is definitely his first appearance, his first casting role, and all that kind of stuff. But that's why it's so weird to think of this as being his follow-up. Not, and it's sometimes we know things are kind of reordered, right? Sometimes the movie will come out before the one, despite the fact that you filmed that one first. But even that's not the case here. It was definitely Days first. It was definitely Days for a really small role, and that grew and grew and grew. And he was so popular on set, and he was so good in the role that they kept writing new material for him and let him improvise and all this kind of stuff. And then it's My Boyfriend's Back, and it's about 20 seconds, and he's guy number 2. It's so strange.
Honestly, I had to ask you, didn't I? Because I don't know what happened. I just had a brain fart or was scrolling on my phone or something. But it was at the end of the movie. I'm like, where the fuck was he? Because I thought he was going to show up as one of the bullies or the original boyfriend. Because that's the weird thing, right? It's, the title of the movie is My Boyfriend's Back, from the old like 50s song, and there's loads of 50s songs where the lyrics are just incredibly wrong, or they're just telling a story of a different time, and music seems to live on a bit better than videos. But it's like the original song, I went back to listen to it, and it's like it's almost like she's got a stalker, and she's like, my fucking boyfriend's gonna be back, he's gonna kick your ass, kind of thing. But yeah, I thought he'd show up as the original boyfriend, but he was never really her boyfriend. They kind of got together when he was a zombie, so it's not really My Boyfriend's Back. So they tried really hard to make that title work. But yeah, he wasn't one of the bullies. He wasn't the original boyfriend. Just you sent me a screenshot. I'm like, oh right, okay.
Quite literally, quite literally, guy 2. It's about 20. I wrote it down actually. It's about 25 minutes into the movie. At this point, Johnny has been killed in like a stick up, hasn't he, at the convenience store where Missy works, and then he's come back to life. Timelines in this are all over the place, aren't they? Because when he first comes back, and you're right, nobody reacts. He's like, I've only been dead for a day. What, in that day you've been dead? You've been had a funeral,
killed,
all that stuff,
embalmed.
Exactly, yeah. The police have dealt with that situation. That's all done. You've been to the undertakers, and you've had the funeral, and you've come back all in a day. All right. But then straight from that, isn't it? He's back at school. Nobody seems to blink an eye, and Missy is just lusting for his undead flesh. So they go on this date, don't they, to a cinema that night. And as you say, she's already got a boyfriend. Buck is her boyfriend, which is played by Matthew Fox, most famously maybe from Party of Five and Lost.
Right, okay.
Yeah, in his first role, and he is awful as well. He becomes a very good actor later on. I absolutely love Lost, and I think he's amazing as Jack in that. But in this, he's clearly learning his craft on set as he goes. Yeah, and it's literally one scene, isn't it? They're together. I hate that conversation in the cinema. They're talking about the snacks they've bought. It's so unrealistic. It's well, maybe it's too realistic. It's so it doesn't fit in this movie. He's giving her a box of sweets, and she's like, "What are these sweets? Oh, have a sweet and then have a drink." And again, maybe there was something in there that I missed satirically. I'm not sure. But then it cuts, doesn't it? And Matthew McConaughey is there talking to his mate about. I mean, I've got the exact dialogue. I mean, maybe we should.
I think. Seeing as we're having this whole episode because it's part of his back catalogue, we've got to stretch the fuck out of this one.
Yeah. What I should have done before we started recording, actually, let's see if I can paste it into the into our chat bar. Let's see if you can see it, and maybe we can try and reenact it. Where does it go?
So there's a little on the right hand side. There's like a little comments thing.
It won't let me type in there though, unfortunately.
That's weird. Hold on. So I can type Has
Oh,
anything
here we go.
flashed up? Little one or something?
I can private chat. Let's see if that comes to you.
Yeah, that's the one.
Is that the one? Have you got it?
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to be guy 1 or do you want to be Matthew McConaughey guy 2?
Let me go, guy. Sorry, the first bit, I guess, is just context, isn't it?
Oh,
So
sorry. Yeah.
I'll go guy 1. So, say, ain't that Buck's girl?
Sure is.
What's she doing here with the dead kid?
I don't know, man. And that's it. He's out.
Perfect.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, at least he got a man in there, which I quite like. He's quite famous for that kind of his Texan drawl, and the man was something that was all throughout Dazed and Confused as well. Yeah, I don't know. It's a strange situation for him to. I guess he was just taking whatever jobs he could get at this point. He was still at uni, to be fair. He was still studying acting. Right. And I guess these opportunities came up, so he just grasped it with both hands and delivered his 2 lines.
I'm wondering, because I haven't looked into Dazed and Confused, and what you said there about he seemed like he had a very minor part, but people liked him there, and so they just grew his role. It may be a case where he was just lacking any real confidence, or didn't even know his own potential brand, and maybe. I think if you're part of a dynasty like the Baldwins or something like that, you can be advised. Whereas if you've just come from a family who doesn't understand how the business works, maybe he's just taking the next role that he can possibly get.
Which is definitely true for him. Like, he's got no lineage to it. None of his neither his parents, none of his brothers, nobody's connected to the industry other than him. And he had no agent at this point. So, yeah, I mean, in the autobiography, funnily enough, he doesn't talk about this movie, the casting, his appearance in it. I know, funny that. But I have got something I'll speak about later, that I've got somebody sort of tangentially talking about the movie and his appearance in it. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess you can decide, and as you will with your rating later, and the listeners could decide based on the fact they have to listen to us talk about it. It is a credited appearance. So according to my own kind of rules I've laid out for this podcast, it means I have to cover
it. Well, you got to take the rough with the smooth, haven't you? So I think it's and you are a completionist, so it does make absolute sense.
And yeah, I did Collateral for the Staith, and he was in that for probably the same amount of time with the same amount of lines. Definitely was not his movie, but he appeared giving Tom Cruise a briefcase in that. So there is precedent for this.
Yeah, so I'm just looking. I mean, the Sean Cunningham guy, I think you mentioned before. I mean, he's made some household. I mean, he did all the House sort of franchise as well. That I didn't realize. Like you say, Jason, Freddie, and Jason, who's the producer on that as well. So he's got some previous.
Yeah, so I'm not an expert on the guy, but that's my feeling I got from what I read, that he sort of had his fingers in a lot of stuff based on the success of the Jason series, basically. Not quite to Jason Blum's level of success. He's become like a almost in-house kind of franchise of his own, hasn't he? But
yeah. But it's interesting because a lot of his stuff looks more horror, and it's like he's trying to make something slightly satirical and a bit more family friendly. Maybe that's why it's so bad.
It's interesting, that, isn't it? Family friendly, necrophilia. I mean, obviously, we know based on some films that you've covered yourself as well on theatrics. Big fan of that.
Wait for someone to pick the second one at some point.
Yeah. Well, Dan's got a new pick coming up, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure he has.
But as you said, like, kind of pervy, he's kind of stalkerish. That's why I got some of that Back to the Future stuff as well. Like, Buck is kind of like Biff, and the way that Andrew Lowry's character, the way that Johnny talks about Missy is kind of that, almost kind of like, I guess, George in a way, like that kind of stalkery peeping Tom kind of.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Honestly, when did you figure that out? And I've got to tell you this as well, right?
Late. Yeah,
late.
Probably
like only in
showing it to one of
recent
my kids and
years.
like, holy shit.
Yeah, you're like, fucking hell. I remember watching it as a kid, and
Mm.
like Marty says, he's a peeping Tom, and you're like, ho ho ho, as a kid. It's a bit funny,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
it? And you get older, and you're like, fucking hell, we're supposed to be liking this guy, and yeah, I gotta tell you. So at work, we are at an interesting time, aren't we? Because we're in the workplace and we've got people who are a lot younger, grew up
Mhm.
completely different, and also people who are a lot older as well, who had very different backgrounds to us. But I guess I feel like in recent years I'm experiencing it more and more when I am feeling like the old fart in the conversation, because
Mhm.
I was talking to some of the team, and we were doing some icebreaker things. So, what's your favorite movie? And I'd have to really sit down and think about it. But the first thing that came to mind is Back to the Future, and the answer isn't that as important as just the icebreaker stuff. And I just I I just said the thing is, when I watched Back to the Future at first, I was Marty McFly, but now I'm George McFly. And as soon as it left my
Ah.
mouth, I realised you ain't got a fucking clue what I'm talking about, have you? I've just said I might as well have said blah 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 blah, or just thrown out two names that you've got no context, Bill and George, or So yeah, it's like, fucking hell, I need to update my pop culture references for this crowd.
You've also just ousted yourself as a peeping Tom as well, of course.
Yeah, well, no, I was thinking more of the dad side of it, but yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
I haven't quite, I'd love to be able to actually do that impression of George when he's laughing at the
Oh,
TV.
right, yeah.
Crispin,
It's
Crispin
amazing,
Glover.
isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, he created that character, and
Mhm.
yeah, I don't see myself quite as much of a dick as that, but the other aspects of it. But yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
it's it's definitely funny. Some of the themes, the fact that Biff is basically a fucking rapist,
Yeah.
with clearly previous as well. It's
Mhm.
like, fuck, why parents did you let us watch this?
Yeah. And that's where this film feels like it's in that kind of nether region as well. Nether region, no, that's
Mm,
definitely not the right term. But like
yeah.
that's where Johnny wants to be. Yeah, it doesn't quite understand where it fits because it wants to have that, but it also wants to be modern. And yeah, it's uncomfortable at times in how it's presenting characters and situations. Like Buck is this kind of character, isn't he? He wants to order Missy around. He wants to be in charge of her. He doesn't want her to have, as you said, any agency, any. And then you've got Philip Seymour Hoffman as his best friend. Philip Seymour Hoffman, who was one of the greatest actors of his generation. He's a real big loss to the acting community. Again,
Mm.
here he's learning how to do it. He is not good in this.
Here's a weird link to our comics
Mm.
stuff. So the credited writer, and I know there's probably lots of fingerprints on this, but Dean Laurie actually did some of iZombie,
Okay.
and
It's
also
stayed in the
the
genre.
the Harley Quinn
Mm.
animated series.
Okay. So there's hope for us all, is what you're saying.
I think so. I mean, this is his first credit, so he was
Yeah.
probably like what do they call them? When they're basically interns and they do all the hard work, but then
Yeah.
someone
Yeah.
else gets credited as the writer. But this is his first credit, and then he does Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. He does Major Pain, Jason X, Drive Angry, a few other things.
Mm.
But yeah, it's more interesting to look at his TV career. So done a bit of Arrested Development, iZombie, Harley Quinn.
Mm.
And Kite Man, hell yeah, which I didn't even know was a thing.
That is interesting. I wonder if it was like a spec script, or depending on where he was, maybe it might have even been like a thesis script that he wrote for a writing course, or what. I don't know, but yeah, it certainly feels like early doors, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Well, it definitely is, but it has that feel as you're watching it. You can tell this is not Seven. This is not Scream. This is not Back to the Future.
The reason I was looking at the writer, because I don't know, like yourself and Dan and stuff, you go more into the writers and understand a little bit more. I just tend to notice, it has to be exceptional writing, either good or bad, for me to even look. But if you put a gun to my head and said, how did this movie get made? I mean, it cost 10 million. I don't know. I don't see it. Where is the 10 million in this movie?
Yeah.
But I was wondering, my little mental hypothesis was, because these films can stay in development hell for years, can't they? So it was actually written in the 80s, and with all of the mindset of the day, and then it sat on the shelf for a while, and then eventually someone picked it up. But it doesn't scream that. It kind of, and obviously there's not that much trivia and stuff on it, so it just looks like it's a fucking shit outdated movie in 1993.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. I agree. And I'm trying to think, when was Clueless out? Like, obviously that hit big. That's high school as well. And like I said, the Buffy movie was 92. So kind of supernatural high school but that didn't do very well, that movie either. So whereas I
Clueless
guess
95.
Okay, so it's after
Years
this.
after this.
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah.
What was supernatural in Clueless?
No, that wasn't, sorry, but the Buffy movie was out in 92, so slightly before this. And yeah, who knows? But that is interesting because obviously Sean Cunningham himself had been around for a while by this point. 80s was his heyday with the Jason movies. And because I was looking up the composer as well, Manfredini, I think his name is, because I thought that this score was atrocious.
Yeah.
And I listened to your Double Trouble review on VHS the other day, and that idea of like they've got kind of two bits of score writing, and they just kind of recycle those over and over and over. That happens here as well. There's like kind of the jaunty tune and the kind of zombie-ish tune, and we'll just keep playing those two. But he's another one. He's like a Sean Cunningham staple. Like, he's done Jason movies, and so clearly it is like a little kind of team that are all working together to produce all these films.
Is it like Danny Elfman and Tim Burton sort of setup?
Yeah. Spielberg and Williams.
Yeah.
Cunningham and Manfredini.
Yeah, it doesn't quite have the same resonance, does it? But
it does not.
I mean, I'm just looking as well. Rotten Tomatoes, 13% from the critics. But weirdly, from over 5,000 ratings in terms of the audience, it gets 45%. So almost half of these people thought that this was a good movie.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, like, looking on letterboxd as I do, it's one of those ones where it's like people saw it when they were younger, and so it stayed with them, and so that nostalgia for it, because they liked it when they were 12 or when they were so that nostalgia for it means like, oh, it's so much fun to go back and watch it. So no, well, you think it's shit, but actually if you'd seen this when you were 12, it'd be great.
I think if you saw this when you were a young boy in particular, I could see that it would resonate, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. Missy is that kind of classic character, that aspiring woman that, as you said before, and ages are all over the place in this, aren't they? The actor Lowry's 23. He's obviously meant to be playing 17 or 18, but he already looks like he's about 30. You're right, she's older than him. I think she's about 26, 27 at this point already in the filming, but she kind of looks her age, doesn't she?
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. If I was a 12-year-old boy, I think I probably would have thought, Missy was the sort of woman that I would be aspiring to. I would imagine to be like Johnny. Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure I'd want a mum like his though, who starts bringing kids home from the supermarket for Johnny to eat,
sticking them in the fridge and stuff. I mean, utterly bonkers. And it's not.
That was supposed to be funny, I guess.
You've just gone where my head was going. It just wasn't fucking funny, or someone probably thought it was. But again, for me, I'm expecting more from black comedy. I'm expecting, you don't want to watch a black comedy. I'm watching those uncomfortable moments when you're like, oh, fucking hell, I shouldn't laugh at that, but Christ, it's funny. But like, oh, we've just decided, we're going to kill, like she's fucking Hellraiser or something, So, yeah, it's just bizarre. And I think it was around those times when I'm just thinking, is this all just in his head, or is some surreal parallel world or something like that? But yeah, it was a bit bonkers, wasn't it? The parents made no sense at all.
No, I think again, it's a commitment thing. I think, like we spoke about before, I think if they committed to this being a black comedy, but because the performances are pantomime, they're almost kind of spoof level of the mum and dad, of the doctor,
Yeah.
of the dad of Philip Seymour Hoffman's character. His name escapes me, but Philip Seymour Hoffman's character ends up killing himself, doesn't he, when he's chasing Johnny?
Yeah.
It's an axe in his own head. Like, that's really silly and slapstick. And so again, tonally, it's just, is it a slapstick? Is it a spoof? Is it supposed to be some sort of satirical black comedy? So all these things just don't sit comfortably with one another. And I think, yeah, Kid in a Fridge probably is never funny, but if it had been of a piece with the rest of the movie, it wouldn't have felt so out of place.
Have you ever seen there is one where Drew Barrymore is kind of a zombie.
Oh, with Timothy Oliphant? No, I have never
Yes.
seen that.
That's not bad.
Yes,
That's
and
not bad.
he has to be like her enabler, doesn't he, in order to... He's her husband, right?
Yeah, that's right. But it's
haven't.
kind of it's a progression.
Mhm.
And it's, again, that I would say that is a black comedy. You know, there's some really dark moments there that are funny, but you see that there's at least some anguish in the
Mhm, mhm,
decision.
mhm.
You know, you kind of have to do this. You have to take people's lives, and these people, like, they might not be that nice, but
Yeah.
you have to make a decision. Are you going to let your wife die or starve or become this rabid zombie? Because that's it's almost accepted now, isn't it? As one of the things that you can do with zombies. If you feed them, they kind of become a bit more sentient and controllable, whereas the hungrier they get, the more kind of wild they get.
Yeah.
It plays off on that, and you can see there's an anguish to it. Whereas this, just like, oh, it's fucking zombie. Oh, he's back. I thought he was dead. Fucking hell, he's back. Oh, great. Let's go and kill the neighbor's kid or something. And it just didn't work.
No, and that's a great example. I should definitely check that out because I have a mad man crush on Timothy Oliphant. So it will happen at some point.
I do
But
too. He's a
oh man,
beautiful man, though, isn't he?
oh,
I mean,
he is.
what a tasty dish.
Tony and I have been doing Justified for Season's Greetings, and
Right.
there's a bit in season 1. There's just something he does as Raylan Givens in that show. I sit and this is a show I watched with my partner Emma. And there was a moment she was like, "You were right," and I was like, "Yeah, I honestly just got like heart palpitations." Like, he was just so good looking in that moment. It just set something off in me, which Tony and I spoke about. Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's obviously my type. Is all I can say.
Yeah. He's one of those. I was gonna say there's hope for us all, but there is, there are very few people as good looking as Timothy Oliphant. But
Mm.
I feel like he's one of those blokes who somehow has got better looking as he's got older. If you go back to like Scream, all right,
Yeah,
you can
and
see he's a
Go
decent
and
looking. Yeah, he's a decent looking bloke, but as he's got older, he's weirdly, there's something.
Mm-hmm.
There's an X factor there, isn't there?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, definitely.
Maybe we've found the post Matthew McConaughey, but I'm not sure your heart could take it.
I don't think it could. No, it definitely couldn't. But there's also like I say, that's a great example. There's, I know Shaun of the Dead is its own thing, but that manages to mix this kind of black comedy and black horror and
Oh,
moments
I
of
love it.
emotionality together. I don't know if you've seen Warm Bodies, which
Yes,
is your play on Romeo and Juliet with Nicholas Hoult. Again, that's very clever. That works really well in terms of how it plays with this idea of the undead and could you have a romantic relationship with them. So it can be done. It has been done. It's just not done.
Not done
here.
very well.
No. And the whole thing builds up to it, the prom, doesn't it? It's that classic kind of high school. He came back from the dead because, back to back. And also Eddie punches out Buck, doesn't he? Of course, in a very George and Biff moment too.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all building up to the prom, aren't we? And that's why they eventually say, don't they? I think that's why Johnny came back from the dead, because Missy promised him as he was dying that she would go to the prom with him. his kind of spirit, his soul, whatever, is like he wouldn't let go. So he came back from the dead in order to go to the prom with her, which is 5 days or something, I think, after he was killed. But he's sort of slowly decomposing and falling apart, isn't he? So building up to that kind of classic, as you said, Earth Angel kind of prom ending. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know. Like I say, if it was an 80s movie, I'd forgive it. You know, the rules are very, you know, okay, through the will or through love, he was able to stay alive or come back from the dead. But you know, now they delivered on the little dance at the prom. Now he can pass on. But then, of course, you know, he does that dream thing, doesn't he? You know, he's going through to the pearly gates and whatever, and he gets his second chance. And again, I thought his speech, I thought the way it happened at the end, because they say it wasn't your time, so he gets to replay
That's right.
it,
Yeah.
almost Deadpool 2 style. You know, he gets to replay that moment. But then, we're talking about a film, a ridiculous film, where someone comes back from the dead through the power of love. But when someone shoots someone else, the idea that this tiny little locket will have this bullet buried in it, you know, I just, again, in this ridiculous film, that was a leap too far for me. Again, you know, I wasn't loving the film at the time. I'm like, oh, fuck off, you know,
Yeah.
it's just ridiculous. And again, the way it's played is she says, oh, look at this, you know, this thing sort of saved you. And look, oh, it's a picture of you and me as like 8-year-old kids or something. In real life, she's like, you're fucking weird.
Yeah.
Get away from me, you fucking creep.
Yeah. The whole thing, I mean, was particularly like contrivance writing, wasn't it? And we have the scene early. I think it starts the movie, doesn't it, when it shows them at the kids' party. He was planning on giving her the gift, wasn't it? So we've had Chekhov's locket from the very go, from the start of the movie.
Yeah.
But the whole like heavenly scene is so like, I've written myself into a corner and I don't know how to get out of it. Talking, you know, Andrew Lowry earlier, the excuse of like, it wasn't your time, you weren't supposed to die then, he was supposed to slip on a coffee pot and all this stuff is really weird. Like, if that was Final Destination, if that was supposed to happen, why didn't it? Because in Final Destination, they're really clever, actually. Like, well, no matter what you think of those movies, the concept is great, and the idea of somebody having this kind of prophetic moment to stop it then makes logical sense for the rest of the movie. Here, nothing happens other than what happens. There is nobody that knocks the coffee pot earlier. There is no like logical sense for why what should have happened is disrupted. So yeah, it just felt like oh shit, we've got to think of a way out of this. Oh, that would do.
Yeah, no, definitely. And just on Final Destination, have you watched them all?
I have, yeah. I watched them all a couple of years ago for like a October Halloween kind of. Yeah,
I mean, for like a throwaway-ish horror franchise, I think the way that all comes around is really, really clever.
So smart. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, but not like this one. So yeah, I agree. It's just kind of lazy writing, isn't it? It's like, oh, he goes, and the fucking coffee thing didn't even play into it. You know,
no,
it wasn't
when
like
he goes
a sliding
back,
doors moment or something where before the coffee pot, this thing was supposed to happen. I'm going to send you back, but surely the coffee must come into play now. No, doesn't.
No, he's magically got the locket on because she gave it to him
writing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Again, like another film it reminded me of was Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. There's a scene when they go up to heaven. But again, well written, funny, clever, kind of sight gags, surrounded by sight gags of all the people that are there. Like the idea that they, you know, where they're from ends up going, you know, they Melvin death. They give death I don't know what the real word for it is, because I think of it of a Melvin because of Bill and Ted, but they give him a wedgie and all this kind of stuff. Like, again, silly, but because it's consistently silly, it all works. Here, it's just, oh yeah, that would do.
You know, I love the my favorite, you know, getting to heaven scene in anything is have you seen This Is the End with like Seth Rogen and
I did, yeah.
Yeah, it's just they kind of get there and their mates there, and it's just like got the thing on his head. He's like, "Welcome to heaven, motherfuckers." Then they do the whole Backstreet Boys thing. I bloody love that movie.
Yeah. Now all we're doing is talking about movies we prefer than this movie, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean the challenge is to keep it going, because we're really. I think we've done a wonderful job. We've been going for the best part of an hour. I mean, if you think about how many times would you have to multiply McConaughey's presence in this movie to go for the length of time we've been talking? I mean, we deserve a medal for this.
Agreed. Yeah. I think just one other little trivia tidbit you might have read as well. I think it's quite interesting. Is that Renee Zellweger had a role in this that was cut? It's only interesting because she was also cut from Dazed. So the poor Renee Zellweger, she keeps turning up, obviously desperate to work with Matthew McConaughey, or they both keep being given roles. They haven't got the same agent, but maybe they're both going to the same acting school or something. I don't know, and then they're going to both turn up.
I think she did all right though.
Yeah, true. But of course, they both turn up in Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in a couple of movies' time. So they really were destined eventually to be together.
Right, their careers were intertwined, were they?
Yeah, at this early stage, it's really weird. Yeah, she's in Dazed, but literally, it's like a blink and you miss it. Like you really do have to freeze the screen. All her dialogue lines were cut.
Yeah,
here she's not on it at all.
For Renée Zellweger, Rennie Russo back in the day. Again, just a very interesting look. Like she shouldn't look like anyone else. Like it's just very unique.
You wanted to be Martin Riggs.
100%. I mean, even without the Renée Zellweger, I'd say yes to that. But
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, no, it was good as well. I'd say is to see as a surprise, because obviously he's no longer with us. But Philip Seymour Hoffman, I thought it was a nice little. He pops up. He's like, even though he's a complete fucking dick, and you're not that sorry when he gets killed. But yeah, that was a good thing.
Yeah, and considering you do have McConaughey for 20 seconds, you do have Matthew Fox, you do have Philip Seymour Hoffman. Zellweger was cut, but she was present. She was on this, so yeah, there are quite a few names that are still, as you said. Excuse me, Edward Herrmann. There's quite a few names that are attached to this that were presences and certainly went on to be presences within the industry.
Yeah, I was just looking. Addams Family Values came out in '93 as well. Hocus Pocus. I'm looking for kind of supernatural things around the same time. That was a classic, wasn't it?
I was going to say, every film you mention, no doubt, is going to be better than My Boyfriend's
Back. 100%. I'm scrolling. I cannot find anything worse. Super Mario Brothers actually, would give it a run.
Yeah, it would. That's true.
Okay, I'm going to stop. True Romance. Honestly,
that's definitely better.
Yeah, it's just really interesting because it feels like a weird mental resonance that we're talking about this movie, and every bone in my body is just saying this should be about 84 to 87. In that kind of time period, and I'd be a little bit more forgiving.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, I said McConaughey totally ignores it in his autobiography. It doesn't exist. It's not on his radar. If you hadn't gone through his list and seen his filmography, you wouldn't even know that he was in it. No. And in fact, even when you're watching it, you don't always know that he is in it.
Yeah.
And that was something that I'm building in for season 2 because, the state hasn't got one, but because he's got an autobiography, is when he's mentioning it, I'm going to read out a little extract from it. So there was a really moving one about Dazed when he's talking about like he based his character on his brother and how he thought his brother was like the coolest guy in the world. Here, zip.
Nada.
I did recently listen to the audiobook of something called All Right, though, which is like an oral history of the making of Dazed and Confused. Really, really, really good. So like all from the, from all the creators, from Richard Linklater all the way down to, cast and crew and as many people as they could get to contribute to it. One person in that did speak about My Boyfriend's Back. So if you don't mind,
really?
I'm going to share their words.
Oh, I cannot wait.
So Sheena Scott, who was involved in the production of the movie, she said, right after Dazed, I was a casting assistant on another movie in Austin called My Boyfriend's Back. And Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey are extras in that movie. They got paid $150. The movie was about a kid who became a zombie. It's a horrible movie. That's all I can find.
Honesty.
That's all I can find of people talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it made almost nothing at the box office. I don't see any evidence it's a cult classic at all. I think, like you say, if you were just 12 to 14 around this time, you fell in love with Missy maybe a little bit, you empathized with the main character, I could see why you'd have a bit of nostalgia for it. But there's nothing really about this. There's nothing original. There's nothing particularly great about it. So yeah, I'm glad we've been able to do it. We'll never watch this again.
No, agreed. I did watch the 20 seconds of McConaughey again just because I wanted to get the exact wording down as I was typing as I was watching.
Yeah, no, you did well there.
All right, I'm going to read a couple of Letterboxd reviews if you'll oblige me, and then I'm going to get your really surprising rating for this movie.
I'm sure everyone will be shocked.
Chris 1 says, don't think I didn't see you in that movie theater, McConaughey. This movie is not good by any means, but I just couldn't turn it off. I was also surprised that Philip Seymour I find his name hard to say. Philip Seymour Hoffman was ever in a movie of this caliber. There's quote marks around that. I guess everybody has to start somewhere.
Yeah, and if one of the things Chris and I did, again courtesy of Dan, was Sly Stallone's Party at Kitty and Studs, later to be re-released as The Italian Stallion. And what I like is how Stallone doesn't really have a lot of shame around that. He was skint at the time. Someone offered him a couple of $100 to film this softcore porn thing. So yeah, you're fucking starving. You've got no work. You're struggling to get by. Fuck it, do it. McConaughey's got no real back catalogue, no brand to protect. Fuck it, $150 back in '93.
Yeah,
buy a small house with that, but or maybe not. No, but yeah, no, fuck it. I absolutely don't think it's anything on McConaughey to appear in this. I think what it will show, and I'm not even sure I've watched Dazed and Confused. I remember seeing in Blockbusters the cover, and I remember thinking, I need to watch that. And I love the Led Zeppelin track. I need to watch that at some point. But I think what you might find here, probably a little bit like Statham, and I don't know if this is in your thinking, but I mean, what a fucking trajectory. To go from literally this to being pretty much a household name and really having his own brand, then it's really, really impressive.
Yeah, and he was really in control of that. He really knew who he wanted to be. He has that period, obviously, where he gets stuck in a cycle, but he talks very honestly about that and the effects it had on him in terms of his confidence. And so he kept saying yes to these romantic comedies he didn't want to do because he didn't think he was worthy of anything else. But it's really interesting reading that. But yeah, as soon as he comes out of that cycle, suddenly he's winning Oscars and he's in True Detective. And yeah, there's a couple of these key moments in his career, and it happens quite quickly for him too. Around about 97, I think it is. So it's only 4 years after this. He's in a couple of movies where suddenly it's like, boom, off you go into the stratosphere. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes you have more admiration for someone like that who, like I said, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm sure. Well, I bet he's had to do a few things to put himself in the shop window, but you do what you have to do, don't you? From those humble beginnings to really make it. I mean, that is the real American dream, isn't it? To really make that stratospheric jump. It doesn't happen to hardly anyone, but to him, it definitely did.
Yeah, and he writes in his autobiography about the fact that, he had to change the uni he was going to go to because his parents couldn't afford where he wanted to go initially. And so, I think they were okay. Do you know what I mean? They weren't destitute or anything like that. But he didn't come, as you said, from Hollywood royalty. He didn't come from a rich background where he could just walk into things. He did his dues and he worked his way up. And then it helps when you look like Matthew McConaughey.
There's
You
no
walk in
doubt
most rooms,
he was granted.
people probably turn their heads.
Yeah.
And then when you work out and you have the body of Matthew McConaughey, that probably helps too. If we're talking about Timothy Olyphant, that's not, McConaughey's in
Yeah.
that sort of league.
But I think the getting your body to that shape, it doesn't just happen by accident. I would never, even you paid me all the money in the world, I just would not have the discipline. Like Hugh Jackman to get himself back into that shape for Deadpool and Wolverine, ridiculous. The amount of discipline it takes, and for him to maintain that. I mean, I think female actresses have equally the same challenge where they're judged all the time, with paparazzi and what have you. But yeah, I think the stunning chisel good looks definitely helps.
Yeah, for sure. Nova says, this feels like a fake movie the characters in a Nickelodeon sitcom would watch that somehow slipped into our reality, and it rules.
It almost had me there. and the thing did, I was like, oh, you know what? This would make a great movie within a movie. It's of that depth that it's a movie within a movie. That's just played out on the cinema screen while something else is going on or something.
Which you kind of get in this, don't you? Because you do get the movie in a movie in this when they're at a zombie horror movie showing when McConaughey's there too. Yes, it's almost. I see what you mean. Yeah, it would work on that level. Yeah,
definitely.
Saying it rules, purposefully badly made.
Yeah.
They go on to say the racism allegory is completely nonsensical and it has the most bizarre 90s video game sounding score I've heard in any film. But it's also genuinely hilarious. It's not even an ironic thing. This movie just runs with the absurdity of the premise and uses it for some legitimately great jokes. Say goodnight, sex boy, is a line that will live rent-free in my head until the day I die, and then immediately re-enter when I wake up a few hours later. The mum is the best character, and I will not hear otherwise.
Yeah, interesting. Different opinions make the world go round is something not many people have said, but I don't know. I just agree with about 10% of that, and then some weird things. So genuinely hilarious. I am glad for that person that they find hilarity in this. I just don't see it.
No, and normally, as you well know, I restrict myself to reviews that mention the Staith, or in this now, McConaughey. I mean, finding reviews that mention McConaughey are few and far between.
Slim pickings. I'm fucking surprised you found one. I mean, that is impressive. It's just someone who happened to mention, happened to spot him, not actually sort this out as a. I mean, you must be one of the only people on the planet who have actually watched this because Matthew McConaughey is in it. That is like, you think of a Venn diagram. There's all the different circles. It's probably you and me in the middle there.
Yeah, should we be proud of that fact? I'm not sure.
I don't know. It's just it's one of these little hobby things. You just end up in these funny situations. Look, it was, I can't remember, was it this week or last week it came out, but Chris and I just did Double Trouble. I mean, fucking hell, I could have lived for another 100 years and not watched or found out about that movie. But I mean, that was actually 92, so that was the year before this. Also, very much an out of time movie. It was an 80s movie somehow made in the 90s. But you end up doing these things, watching these ridiculous movies that, it has been said, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Watching this shit. But no, the payoff is later when we get to discuss it and tear it to pieces.
That was said in my house when the first 20 minutes of My Boyfriend's Back was being watched in the presence of somebody else, and then they quickly left.
I'm sure
You'll be
there are
pleased to know.
partners of podcasters all across the world, like uttering those words. What are you doing with your life?
Yeah, but I hope you're pleased to know that I watched My Boyfriend's Back and then Double Trouble back to back. That was my two days in a row
double
of viewing.
bill of quality home cinema.
Yeah.
Hey,
What
that is
am I doing with my life?
I just saw that's a cracking Wolverine
Oh,
picture you
yeah,
got
yeah.
like that. It's very nice. Very good. There's a Spanish artist, I can't remember her name, but does stuff very similar to that. I've got a Daredevil, but very symmetrical and very one tone colors.
Yeah, like the kind of minimalist stuff. Yeah.
Very minimalist. Yeah, no, it's very cool.
Why, thank you. Yeah, if only I'd drawn it myself, that would have been great, wouldn't it? I think that was from Rhea, actually. I think that was a present from her.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
She's got a good eye for art. Okay. We'll get to, I mean, we'll literally do anything but not to have to talk about this movie. Ratings have stayed the same, but just in case, within McConaughey's kind of filmography, is this a classic? Is it worth catching? Or is it that sweet spot, those two little pins in the middle of that Venn diagram for completists only?
I think, yeah, definitely a classic. No,
the growth you see in his performance.
I do, yeah, I do want to see, just toyed with the idea of making listeners who were on the edge and thinking, "Oh, I don't have to watch this." No, it's definitely a classic. Sorry, what was the classic completionist? Don't fucking bother.
Yeah.
No, there's no need to watch this at all. I mean, the blink and you miss it appearance is interesting to know. Is a little bit of trivia. And again, it makes me have more admiration for the guy before I watch this to think, fucking hell, you absolutely blew it out of the water. I mean, I'd have to go back and probably look at someone like Tom Cruise, but for someone, in and around our age group, Tom Cruise has just always been there. He's always been this kind of megastar. Whereas to see someone with a massive trajectory that basically is a glorified extra who says a couple of lines, to go to being an A-lister, fucking hats off to you, sir.
Now, you know what? That's really interesting you picked Tom Cruise, because when my partner Emma, we first got together, one of the things we bonded over was the love of Top Gun and kind of that era of his movies in the Mission Impossible franchise, actually. So we did our own, for funsies, watch of the whole Tom Cruise filmography.
Right.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. So maybe that's where this idea was born. I'm not sure, but we did that, several, we've been together for 10 years. So many, many years ago. And he's in a movie, as you're talking, I was desperately trying to remember what it was called. And he has literally the same as this, actually, like a blink and you'll miss it appearance. He's like sunbathing in a park and the couple walk past and he runs up to him and he's like, has one line about like, "Oh, I'll see you at the frat house later." And then that's it. And DiCaprio has one like this as well, where he's supposedly in Poison Ivy, the Drew Barrymore movie, which I'm sure you've seen.
I haven't seen it actually, but I think I remember the VHS cover. Is it a bit of a saucy one? Is it a bit of an erotic thriller?
It is, but in all the wrong ways. Like she's 17 and he's somebody's dad.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm sure I've told this on the VHS, but I'll tell you now again. The thing is, right, how long was that? I'm sure I joined about 96 to about 99, and the thing is, you get to know the video covers. And the thing is, I'm sort of coming in late teens, early 20s time. So the erotic thriller section did not go unnoticed from young Dave. But the thing is, when you rent shit out Like everyone in the fucking store knows. I don't mean the customers. I mean all of the
Yeah,
other
yeah.
the crew or whatever the fuck you call them. So all your mates who are, cheap student labor as well. So there's no fucking way I'm renting stuff like that out. So yeah, when you said it, I think that's in the category of, oh, I'd love to rent that out, but I can't.
Definitely. Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to add that
Wow.
to the collection.
Yeah, I'll add it to my list of suggestions for you and Chris as well.
Yeah.
I think that'd be an interesting one to hear talk about. It also reminds me of Love Film pre-Netflix, when you used to get the DVD sent to you through the post.
That was
And
I loved Love Film, and you know what?
me too. Yeah.
If there was an equivalent offering right now, I mean, Netflix started off in the same way, didn't it? Love Film.
Well,
Was
I
just
think it's
like
the
the
same
UK
company. I think
version.
I think they turned into Netflix.
I thought Netflix
Oh, okay, maybe I
were the
misunderstood.
American sort of version. They definitely started off with the
Okay.
mail order stuff. I think I don't. Well, fact check me if you want, but I'm not married to it. I think Love Film was like a UK company
Fair,
that was
yeah.
acquired by Netflix. But
Okay.
there's something about getting that physical
Hmm?
DVD, and I don't know, that sense of ownership. And I feel that I don't have a record player, and I'm not a fucking what do you call them, like the guys with the beards and. Oh, it'll come back to me, but at some point, right, if I've got "fuck you, boss" money, I'll get my record player, because there's something about the process of just getting out a record and looking at the artwork and looking at all of the writing and inscriptions and things, and then polishing off your little bit of vinyl there and putting it on. There's something about the process of it, and whereas with the streaming now, it's like flick, 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 flick. Let's have a look at that. 5 minutes in, no, I don't watch that. I don't want to watch that. Let's watch something else. So yeah, sorry to go all nostalgic there, but
No, it's definitely true, and that factors into all these kind of streaming figures, doesn't it? 100%.
yeah,
When you've got that DVD, when you've paid for the service, you're going to watch it, aren't
I
you?
am fucking watching that
Yeah,
piece of shit, no matter how bad it is.
I remember I borrowed a film, and this is, straight away before I say the title, you know where I'm going with this. It was called Naked Weapon. But
I think I remember that from the same section.
Yeah, well, actually, no, it's a Maggie Q like martial arts movie.
Right.
So she is the weapon, and okay, she doesn't wear that many clothes in it, but she's not naked. But it got lost in the post, so I now have to contact Love Film. I have to put in a claim for the missing DVD. And so, what was it that you borrowed, sir? A martial arts movie. Oh, okay. Who's that? What was it called? It starred Maggie Q.
You know what? I've never
times.
told this. I don't think I've even told Chris this. So so South Park. I was into South Park as soon as it came on the TV, and again before it was out on DVD or anything. And I just fell in love with the ridiculously of it. I was coming to the end of my uni time. I think it was 98. South Park came out. It's just, what the fuck's this? And but because you're a student, and it's a bit silly and counterculture and whatever. But got to like them more and more, and so I'd watch Basketball, and I seeked out. I hadn't watched the movie, but I just took a punt on it as a DVD. Orgasmo. Well, again, in the comfort of your own home, like and the person, the partner who I was with at the time, knows this. This is because of my love of Matt Stone and Trey Parker. And I was away at work, right? And you take a few. I remember I had a little DVD case, and I put in a bunch of DVDs. And actually, I never used to watch that many movies on the laptop, but I'd pack them. It was like my gym gear, right? I'd pack that as well in the spirit of doing something when I was away. Instead, I ended up going to the bar and just having a few beers. But the Orgasmo DVD was just bright pink with black lettering of Orgasmo on it. And I was working with a couple of customers who just happened to be young ladies. And for whatever reason, I think I needed to install some software or something. I was working with them both, and I popped the DVD/CD player thing, and out pops my fucking DVD of Orgasmo, big fucking pink thing, and they're right there. There's no way they didn't see it. Now, instead of trying to explain it, or maybe just now, like I wouldn't give a fuck. It's like, oh, fucking hell, it's a movie, whatever. So, in my early 20s awkwardness, I just slam the fucking thing shut as fast as I can, go bright fucking red, and try and talk and waffle about some other shit in a very evasive, like deflective way. And I could see it. I could see it in my mind's eye now, the uncomfortable expression on their face. And the three of us, we know
Yeah.
I've just popped a porno out there, but I know that it's not a porno, but I can't, in my panic, just fight or flight. I was fucking whichever of those, I was just frozen. Honestly, if I'm at the pearly gates and I'm like, get asked, what was, top 5 most embarrassing moments of your life, that's definitely up there.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. Good of them to give you a really like obvious DVD as well. Good for them. Lovely marketing.
Motherfuckers. I mean, they honestly probably even thought, didn't they? I hadn't made that connection, but the type of people they are, they'd have been like, oh, someone we don't even know, but we're gonna make these like bright pink, and so it looks like a porno DVD. And somewhere someone's gonna discover this without knowing what it is and think it's a proper porno. So
100%. Yeah.
bunch of bastards.
And that was you.
Yeah. I was
I'm
the
glad-
one person.
I'm glad their wish came true. Superb, mate. Thank you so much.
No problem. It's been great fun. It's been a lot more fun than watching that fucking movie, I have to say.
Definitely laughed a lot more.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again. And thank you everyone else for listening and partaking in this journey with me through the reconnaissance. That was My Boyfriend's Back. Next up in a fortnight, I'm joined by Math to discuss Eminem's appearance as baseballer Ben Williams in William Deere's Angels in the Outfield for anyone that is watching along. Until next time, be excellent to each other and make sure you take the time to treat yourself too. I am Jack signing off. Yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers.
All right.
Cut.